Too long of a lead in play.
We all know that song, The Thrill Is Gone. And Ted, for you, the thrill is gone, it sounds like.
Oh, certainly is.
I asked you a question earlier. Who was really responsible for this, taking care of the preferred stockholders and giving the bondholders the benefit when they should have been placed after the preferred stockholders?
Well, President Obama has a lot of czars. And Eric Holder is one of the czars that is really responsible for this whole thing, because he's the one that wrote the regulations that allowed deviation from our normal bankruptcy laws, which allowed my stock to be converted to this Motors liquidation company. And that basically was what happened to my shares. The Motors liquidation stock is worth about 12, 13 cents a share.
Our in-studio guest is Ted Fowler and Michael Bowers, talking about redistricting and spending a little time talking about Obama Motors.
Hey, Michael, before we move on, you made a comment while we were on the break about government and business. Why don't you say that again?
No, this is clearly an example of why government shouldn't interfere with businesses. You know, government should never be telling businesses how to operate their businesses. And when we have government trying to encroach upon businesses, they're going to put them out of business, and then they're going to change the whole landscape of business. It's another way of government socializing businesses.
Well, if this doesn't do it, the legislation that's going to increase our taxes for anybody making over $250,000 is definitely going to destroy business.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. Now, just to lay this out again, Ted and Michael, basically, you're looking at, you've got a comparison here. You've got Ford, who took a bath, and people that held the Ford stock, obviously lost a lot of money. But Ford stockholders have the potential to hold on to it and regain the money back, which they have done to a certain degree. A lot of that money's come back.
Yeah, quite a bit of that money's come back from its low. As a matter of fact, I bought additional Ford stock when it was down at the very bottom, and because of that, I've recouped quite a bit of my Ford stock. They didn't give me that opportunity in GM. When they converted my shares of GM, I could not go out and buy the new GM stock. They wouldn't allow me to do it, even at any price.
Well, see, and here's the interesting thing, because the way stock usually works in a bankruptcy, you're supposed to be getting new stock for the old stock.
Exactly.
But you were not given that option.
Was not given that option. They did it for me.
So, Ted, are you going to buy a GM in your next car?
Yeah, you can bet on that, sure.
I know you mentioned you're looking at a Ford truck.
I want a new Ford truck so bad I can taste it.
Now, before we leave this subject, Ted, what did you get in the mail yesterday? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Not at all, Marty. I received in the mail yesterday from Garden City Group Incorporated, which is Motors Liquidation Company, a letter, and I'm just going to read you part of it. It talks about take notice of this and take notice of that, but the bottom line is this. It says, please take further notice that the effective date of the plan as defined in the plan occurred on March 31st, 2011, and as a result, the plan has been substantially consummated. That means I can no longer do any more. I can't bring lawsuits. I have no more opportunity to do anything to recoup my loss.
So here it is. I mean, that's a pretty important announcement. So all the stockholders in GM, in the old GM, got that notice yesterday. I
would assume, because I received 3 of these letters, because I held stocks in 3 different entities, and I got 3 letters. So I'd assume everybody got one.
Well, now this is interesting. The 4 of us, I think the 4 of us are pretty well versed on what's going on in the media and on the news. Has anybody seen this on the news?
I haven't seen this on the news, no.
Okay. I mean, you would think it'd be newsworthy?
You would think it would be newsworthy that there's no recourse for those people that held shares in General Motors.
Sure.
What we hear on the news is that GM's paying back the government.
That's right. Yeah, which is also a flim-flam arrangement, because they're paying it back on tax credits that they got from the...
They borrowed the money from the government in order to pay back the government.
Right. Yeah, that's a great arrangement. I'd love to do that.
Love to do that.
Yeah. Well, let's play.
Let's go to redistricting.
Yeah, let's change the subject. The 4 of us were at that meeting. Michael, let me ask you your feeling about that meeting. We were there, 3 weeks ago now?
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago.
And the four of us were there.
Yeah, us four were there at the meeting, and the redistricting group is comprised of about 14 individuals throughout the state. It was interesting to find that no one from Kern County was on that redistricting panel. Mm-hmm. No one from Kings County was on that redistricting panel. No one from Kings County was on that redistricting panel. And the people that were on that panel come from Sacramento, Los Angeles area, San Diego area, the big Democratic areas.
San Francisco,
as Clay so eloquently put it.
Yes.
But it made you think, and it's just to see the unions out there in full force.
Okay, now before you jump to the unions, there are 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 declared not to state.
Correct.
Okay, so doesn't that sound like it would be a fair, equitable distribution?
It sounds like it would be a fair, equitable distribution, but
theoretically,
but when you get into it and extrapolate it and look at it, and one of the things I found interesting is that it seemed like one of the prerequisites for being on the California Redistricting Commission was that you either went to UC Berkeley or UCLA. It seems like everyone came from either UC Berkeley or perhaps be a lawyer, and which half of the commissions are attorneys or practicing law. And I bring up that issue because we know UC Berkeley and UCLA are some of the most liberal universities in California.
Sure.
So it makes one think that is it going to be fair, especially for the people here in Kern County?
Sure.
Definitely. I think the entire group was minorities, if I understand correctly. And then when you talk about the few Republicans that are on there, 2 of them have some common sense, and the other 3 can be led around like sheep, I understand.
Absolutely.
So,
we're having a conversation with Ted Fowler and Michael Bowers about redistricting on Taking Care of Business. Ted, let me ask you your feelings on that meeting.
Well, I went to the meeting. Let me just go back to give you some basis on where I'm coming from. I was very, very excited about the opportunity that we had to vote and change the the way the district lines were drawn in the I think it was the election before last, and so I immediately went online and tried to just keep pace of what was going on. And when they formed the commission, as they were forming the commission, I was very interested in being a part of that commission. So I went online and I applied to be a part of that commission. Now, I was turned down, and the reason they gave me that I was turned down was that I had changed my political affiliation within the last 5 years. I used to be a Republican, but I changed my affiliation to decline to state because I just really am not 100% in favor of what the Republicans are doing either. But then when I looked back at the criteria for being on the board, there was nothing said about changing your political affiliation. So the way it looked to me from that point is that the staff or someone in the organization are drawing the rules, changing the rules as they go to get things done the way they want it done. So I stayed very close in touch with it, and when they decided to have a meeting here in Bakersfield, of course I went to it. And my experience was this. And I know we're running short on time.
You're fine. You're fine. We've got plenty of time. Plenty of time.
I was the 5th speaker, and there were a few people that spoke before me. I spoke, and I tried to represent myself as just the common guy. Matter of fact, I introduced myself as the other guy, the guy that wants to see these lines drawn fairly. Beyond me, there were the next 12 speakers were all Hispanic speakers. Nothing wrong with that. They should be represented too. But it was obvious that these people had prepared script in front of them. They were all reading from it. And then the final one was a lady that represented a Hispanic organization, and basically what they want to do is dilute the districts dilute the conservative representation in each district so that the liberals or the progressive can control all the districts. That's the way it looks to me.
Well, what I got out of that was that they wanted to stay in the same district that they're currently in, yet they stood there in Spanish and said they don't understand why they don't have good roads, why they don't have good schools. Their education is bad. There's no sidewalks. There's no parks. And yet they want to stay with the same representatives that they currently have.
Yeah, that's correct. That's each of the Hispanic speakers basically said how bad their life was and how raw of a deal they're getting.
So my question is, what's doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results?
Well, that's insanity. And a matter of fact, that brings up a good point. The commission hired a firm called Q2 Data Research out of Berkeley, California, to assist them in drawing the lines. Well, this is the same company that was doing it before for all the politicians. So, we're letting the same company do the same thing as they did before with just different criteria.
Ted, isn't the founder of that company a confirmed Democrat?
Well, Bruce Kane is the owner
Right.
of Q2 Data, and they have tried to basically eliminate him from the decision-making process in their contract with them. But he's the owner of the company. I mean, what are his employees going to do?
Right, exactly.
Well, they brought in Karen McDonald, who's also the head of the statewide database, and she's a confirmed Democrat that works on these committees year in and year out.
That's correct.
Yeah, she's been around for about, 20 years on these committees.
Right.
We'll be back in a minute on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio Newstalk 1180.